Well, my friends, welcome to the first ever episode of Spot On with Link Lauren, a show where I'm going to break down the calamities of Hollywood, the circus of Washington, D.C., and everything in between. I can't even contain my excitement. It has taken years to get here, and I'm so grateful to everyone tuning in. I spoke a little about my life story on Megyn Kelly's show last Friday, and I couldn't be prouder to have her in my corner producing this project. Now, every day, people ask about my political ideology. What do you stand for? How'd you get this way? That last question, I'll have to unpack 30 years from now in therapy, but I can tell you my political ideology is common sense, which lies predominantly with the Republican Party and President Trump right now. They're on the 80% of all of these 80-20 issues. I don't want men and women's sports. I don't want MS-13 gang members running amok on our streets, taking over apartment complexes. I don't want a repeat of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungari, who are brutally murdered by illegal migrant criminals. Even Bill Clinton said back in 1995, we are a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. Democrats used to want secure borders. They would have never allowed men and women's sports, but they've gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs the last 10 years. It's insane. And there's one clip going viral right now that really makes my blood boil, and it encapsulates why I could never identify with the Democrat Party today. This is Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy when asked by New York Times columnist Ross Douthat about men and women's sports. Take a look.
I don't have any fear of transgender athletes participating in sports, but
wait, just so you don't have any fear of it. Do you think it's if you had a daughter competing against a biological male, would you find it unfair?
I don't have girls, right? So I necessarily can't, right? I can't put myself in that position.
Have some empathy, right, for those of us who do, right? So would you find it unfair?
I mean, I've talked to lots of parents of girls in Connecticut who do not think it's unfair, and who think that the benefits that those athletes get from being part of a team is important, and they don't mind or feel threatened by the competition. I think everybody can come to their own conclusion, but your conclusion is the official line of liberalism right now. It's you're saying you don't. My conclusion is that I would support those athletes being able to participate in my community, right? In my community, but I would not substitute my judgment and my community's judgment for another community's judgment.
That clip makes my skin crawl. Chris Murphy, Hakeem Jeffries, Tim Walz, Cory Booker, Chuck Schumer, you're all a bunch of beta male bitch boys who can't defend women. There should be no stuttering. This isn't Joe Biden in a debate. It's a yes or no question. These men who preach about feminism and DEI are liars and hypocrites. If you can't condemn men and women's sports, then you're a neutered man with no principles. Senator Murphy and all his elite Democrat friends in DC are fine with women getting beat up on the volleyball court and losing out on trophies and scholarships. Basically, young women, what they're telling you is, it doesn't matter if you train hard, get up at 4 a.m. every day, a man can come along and take all that you worked for at the last minute. And if you speak up, you're transphobic, you're bigoted, you just need to deal with it, ladies, and be uncomfortable. Now, I want all the women to know, the moms, the grandmas, the dads too. I will go to the mat on this issue. It's an issue that kicked off my career in commentary and politics years ago. And I want these men in the Democrat Party to listen closely. I'm going to have my foot on your necks every day over this issue. I'll be here on this show, on social media, I'll be here in the midterms and in 2028 until you defend women and stop dancing around their safety and security. I'm not going anywhere. In fact, I'm just getting started. I will be a thorn in your side until you have the balls to put your foot down and say enough. No woman should have to feel uncomfortable on her sports team or in the locker room ever again. Now let's have some fun. We have a great show lined up today. We're talking Dylan Mulvaney, Prince Harry. We have an interview with Calley Means and so much more in store. Let's dive right in. Well, we must have stumbled into some bad luck because Dylan Mulvaney is back. I thought we left Dylan Mulvaney behind in 2023. The last time Dylan Mulvaney was famous, Joe Biden was still president, and honestly, he might have still known what day it was. But Dylan Mulvaney is back in the news, and you'll never guess why. Dylan Mulvaney is cosplaying Melania Trump's New Year's Eve outfit from about 6 months ago. That's what Dylan Mulvaney is doing. Honestly, Dylan, you don't look that great. Now, at first, I had no idea how Dylan Mulvaney ended up with Melania Trump's Versace dress from New Year's Eve. I thought, you know what? Maybe Melania Trump and her amazing, iconic stylist, Hervé Pierre, left it in a donation bin that Dylan Mulvaney went to rummage through like a little raccoon. That was my first theory. My second theory was this. Maybe Melania Trump, she's having so much fun on New Year's Eve at Mar-a-Lago, she goes up and tosses the dress off the tower at Mar-a-Lago into the bushes, and Dylan Mulvaney, like a little raccoon, takes the dress and runs off with it. But turns out that is not the case. Donatella Versace herself sent Dylan Mulvaney this iconic dress that our wonderful, beautiful First Lady Melania Trump wore back on New Year's Eve. Now, we have a picture of Donatella Versace. It's going to make you gag. Let's put it up right now. So when we look at this picture at first, I'm just going to call it like I see it. That's why you guys come here. We are kicking the show off with a bang. We've got Dylan Mulvaney, Donatella Versace. When I look at this picture, I can't tell who's transgender. I can't tell who's had more plastic surgery. Honestly, Dylan Mulvaney has had facial feminization surgery, gender transition surgery, hormones, Botox, you name it, and still looks like more of a woman than Donatella Versace, who is slowly morphing into Mickey Rourke. I don't think Donatella is going to be sending me clothes after this episode, but nonetheless, who cares? I'll also say this. Dylan Mulvaney is not good for any brand. The fastest way to tank your brand is to have Dylan Mulvaney endorse it. We saw that with Bud Light, right? They sent Dylan Mulvaney all of these cans with his face on it, and immediately the stock started to plummet. But I'm the type of person, because I call it like I see it, because I'm fair, I actually somewhat defended Dylan Mulvaney in the Bud Light scandal, and let me tell you why. This is one of my first big viral videos. Some of you who've been with me for years, you might remember this. So Dylan Mulvaney was getting lambasted, raked over the coals for this Bud Light scandal. And I said, you know what? Bud Light, they're the ones who strayed from their core competencies. Bud Light, they're the ones who decided to send all these cans to a man in a dress who mocks women for a living, because that's what Dylan Mulvaney does. That's how Dylan Mulvaney became famous. He was posting these videos saying, oh, I chipped a nail, I'm having a bad day, I must be a girl, this is what womanhood is like. My life has been so enriched by the strong women within it. There's strong, incredible women producing the show right now behind the camera. I can tell you, Dylan Mulvaney knows absolutely nothing about womanhood if he thinks it's makeup, lipstick, hair extensions, and dresses. That has nothing to do with real womanhood. I was raised by a strong, independent woman. I can tell you that right now. Dylan Mulvaney is a joke. But Bud Light, they sent Dylan the cans. All Dylan was doing was collecting a check, doing a brand deal like every other influencer. Now, Bud Light, most of the people who drink Bud Light, they are not transgender. They are not men in dresses. They are not cringeworthy influencers, but some dumbass at Bud Light thought it would be a good idea to send Dylan Mulvaney those cans. I actually think Versace, this liberal, elite, high fashion institution sending dresses to Dylan Mulvaney makes a little bit more sense. But what I don't understand is this. Donatella Versace, she could send clothes to angel moms, warrior moms, school teachers. Some of you out there would love to have a hair and makeup session, have someone come and bring you a fancy $1,000 dress to put on for the day and go to a fabulous event. But Donatella Versace, she is telling you where her priorities lie, right? She doesn't care about the forgotten men and women of this country. She cares about this transgender influencer who makes a mockery of women every single day and then wants to cry and play the victim. That's what Dylan Mulvaney does, right? Dylan Mulvaney tries to say, oh my God, everyone's so mean to me. Everyone's so harsh on me. Dylan, you have become rich and famous because you put a dress on, all right? People would love to do that. I wish I didn't have to work that hard. In my next life, we could all come back as Dylan Mulvaney and become rich and famous for doing absolutely nothing. Now, Dylan Mulvaney, he was praised by his fashion. He had think pieces written on him in Vogue. But if you're a Republican, if you're a conservative, if you're a real woman who happens to be an independent and goes against the left-wing doctrine, you are going to get attacked by the fashion elites. And that's what they did to First Lady Melania Trump just a few months ago in January in Vogue. They decided to denigrate her official White House portrait where she looks strong, she looks incredible, she looks like she's ready to take on the world. But Vogue, they really had a problem with this. We have a quote right here from the journalist, Hannah Jackson. Let me read it to you. She said, Trump looked more like she was guest starring on an episode of The Apprentice than assuming the role of First Lady of the United States. Trump's clothing certainly didn't help the boardroom pastiche. The choice to wear a tuxedo as opposed to a blazer or blouse made Trump look more like a freelance magician than a public servant. It's perhaps unsurprising that a woman who lived in a gold-encrusted penthouse, whose fame is so intertwined with a reality television empire, would refuse to abandon theatrics and when faced with 248 years of tradition. So this journalist, Hannah Jackson, let's put her up on the screen, right? Let's put Hannah Jackson up on the screen. She has made a living tearing down beautiful conservative women who care about the children in our country. That's what Melania Trump is doing. She has the Take It Down Act. She's doing tons of incredible things, right? And the fashion literati, all of these liberals like Hannah Jackson who live in their walk-up apartments in Bushwick and are miserable and just want to tear down anybody they don't like, what they don't understand is this. If Melania Trump had a D next to her name, they would love her. The same thing with Usha Vance, right? The fact that Usha Vance happens to be a Republican, she happens to be married to J.D. Vance, they are going to tear her down because all of these people, they want to preach feminism and acceptance and lifting women up. They want to preach about Roe v. Wade and whine about the Dobbs decision. But when it actually comes to uplifting women who have an R next to their name and happen to be Republicans, conservatives, MAGA, even independents, no, they have no room for those women. And objectively speaking, I say this as a gay man, I can be objective. If we look at Jill Biden, Michelle Obama, and Melania Trump, Melania Trump is the most stunning first lady we've had in decades, okay? I don't care what you want to say, everybody. You can act like keyboard warriors. Melania Trump is the most stunning first lady we've had in decades. I also have to point out, Vogue used to love Melania Trump. Before she was first lady, before her husband got into presidential politics as a Republican, they would put Melania on the cover of Vogue. Now, they're never going to put her on the cover of Vogue as first lady, which I think is an atrocity. Jill Biden has been on the cover of Vogue 3 times, and she looks like a streetwalker in her fishnet leggings and her leather skirts. That woman... Jill Biden, you look like a streetwalker on Houston Street. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be cordial. It's our first ever episode. I'm going to have some decorum. We're here on Megyn Kelly's network. I'm going to have some decorum. I will also say Michelle Obama, she's been on the cover of Vogue 3 times herself, and she looks like an utter calamity half the time. I don't know who is styling Michelle Obama. Maybe it's Stevie Wonder, but the fact that she's been on the cover of Vogue 3 times is crazy, and Melania has never been on the cover of Vogue once as first lady. So all of these liberal fashion literati folks who sit in their penthouse apartments, they can continue to tear down conservative women all they want. But Trump won the popular vote. He won 77 million votes from Americans. That's about half the country. Kamala Harris, she got her ass handed to her. She lost every single swing state. President Trump won the House, the Senate, the Electoral College. So all of these folks, they can turn their backs on half the country. They can denigrate half the women in this country. But even from a capitalistic standpoint, I don't understand what Vogue is doing. Why are you tearing down conservative women when you could be giving them a shot? Usha Vance, she's an Indian American. She's the first Hindu second lady. If she had a D next to her name, if Usha Vance were a Democrat, they would have loved her. But that's why people aren't buying Vogue. That's why these magazines are going out of fashion, going out of style, and shutting down. So to conclude and bring it all home, Melania Trump, she wears a dress on New Year's Eve. She is attacked. She is raked over the coals. They say her outfit is too scandalous. Why is she wearing that as first lady? Vogue drags her. They say she's a freelance magician. They say she's boardroom pastiche. Okay, that's what they say about Melania Trump. Dylan Mulvaney, a man, puts on the same dress and is praised by the fashion literati. Dylan Mulvaney puts on the exact same dress, like when you order it online versus when it arrives in the mail. Dylan Mulvaney looks like the Alibaba, Temu, Wish version of Melania Trump. Dylan, you wish you had the fashion wherewithal of Melania Trump. You don't. You tried. Better luck next time. But Dylan Mulvaney puts on the exact same dress and is praised. Vogue is saying Dylan looks incredible. They say Dylan Mulvaney is opening doors for women. That's how far the feminist movement has come on the left. A man in a dress with balls. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't have balls anymore. We'll have to check in and get back to you on that one. But Dylan Mulvaney, a man, is opening doors for women and breaking down barriers for women for putting on a $1,000 dress and going out to a fancy, high highfalutin event. All of you liberals are out of touch. You're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, like I said in the intro. I wish you well, but we have to move on to some other important things like Prince Harry. Now we have to talk about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of White Castle, the Duke and Duchess of Waffle House. Now I got a ton of hate comments. You guys said, it's not fair to Waffle House. It's not fair to White Castle. You can't call them the Duke and Duchess of White Castle. White Castle is way too classy for those two little hucksters. The Duke and Duchess of Soho House. Maybe that's their nickname. You know, Meghan, she loves that guy from Soho House. Probably would have married him if he were straight. So let's talk about Prince Harry and why he's back in the news. So Prince Harry, I don't know if his brain is fried from all the mushrooms and the alleged psychedelics that he uses in California, but this man was in London last week and went door to door, knocking on people's doors and pressing their Ring cameras. Now, someone's Ring camera picked up this picture. It's been going viral. Imagine you're at home. Imagine you're at home and Prince Harry shows up at your door. Now, 10 years ago, a few years ago, I would have loved that if Prince Harry showed up at my door unannounced. Come on in, sweetheart. Let me pour you some tea. Let me give you some crumpets and scones. We all know I have a thing for gingers, but Prince Harry, he's turned into a little beta male bitch boy. He's basically been emasculated. He's allowed himself to be emasculated. So I don't really find him all that appealing anymore. But The Sun broke this story. Someone turned over the picture to them. We have the article here. So he was caught on this Ring camera. He's talking on the phone. Some of you commented, he looks like he was trying to score. People said he looks like he's trying to score drugs. I thought maybe he's going for an afternoon delight. Maybe he's going for a hookup, as some of you in the business world call it. Maybe he's going for a little nooner. If I weren't here during this show, I'd probably go get a little nooner myself, but I have to work, unlike Prince Harry. So one person said the housekeeper answered the door for Harry, but she did not recognize him. This is tough. If Prince Harry shows up at your door, you would probably recognize him, but this is how much he's been gone from the royal family, right? He left in 2020 before COVID. He's been long and forgotten. William, Catherine, King Charles, Camilla, they've gone on with their royal engagements. For all intents and purposes, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, they're reality stars like the Kardashians, living in California, hawking jellies, jams, and dog biscuits. So let's go back to the article. Prince Harry, he knocked on 2 more houses after the first one with the housekeeper, and then he finally found his friend. He claims he was looking for a friend. I don't really know if I believe that, right? Prince Harry, you'd think he would know his way around London because he literally has streets named after him. He is Prince Harry. You would think the man knows his way around, but apparently not. So Prince Harry, he finally gets to his friend's house, right? He gets to his friend's house. He's having a good time, but this picture gets turned over to the newspaper, and I'm glad it did because it shows that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are also hypocrites and liars. Prince Harry, he was just in the UK. He lost his appeal for security, and let me explain this to you. Prince Harry, he got $100 million from Netflix. The man has never really had to work. All he's had to do is show up for a few social engagements, charity engagements. He is British royalty. He has never really had to work like the rest of us. But Prince Harry, he wants everyone else to pay for his security. He thinks he's the king himself. He thinks he's the president of the United States, and he deserves to have everybody pay and pick up the tab for his security when he goes out partying in London. No, you should have to pay for your own security, Prince Harry, and you're making millions and millions of dollars dining out on your name and your family heritage, Harry. So nobody should have to pay for your security. Harry also said he would never bring his family back to the UK. He said that last week in a BBC interview because it's so unsafe. Let's take a look and then discuss.
I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point. And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done. So, you know, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK, of course I do. And I think it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show, you know, my children my homeland.
So Prince Harry wants us to believe that the UK is so unsafe he could never bring his children to his homeland. I could never go. I don't have security. I need the police to follow me around. He is a liar. That is a bunch of buffoonery, tomfoolery, and malarkey because clearly the man is going door to door like a gigolo. You call an order on the phone looking for his friend. He's looking for his friend, Prince Harry. You're out there looking for your friend. I'm sure you are looking for your friend because you didn't want to go back to Meghan Markle. Now, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They are going overboard to show you they are in love. And they do this anytime William and Catherine are in the news with their children. Prince William and Catherine, they've been in the news constantly recently. They've done a ton of engagements. We are so happy to hear Catherine is back in good health after her cancer situation. We are sending you well wishes, Catherine. But I have to say, Prince Harry did make it back to Los Angeles in time for the Beyoncé concert. I think this is her Cowboy Carter tour, and it looks like Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had a box. They're dancing, having a good time, taking high-definition pictures, posting videos, and Meghan Markle knows what she's doing, right? Let me just tell you, if you are secure and in a relationship that is secure, you don't have to try this hard to show everybody you are happy. But Meghan Markle, like I said, she's turning into a Kardashian. And this is what the Kardashians do. They used to post everything. They would post their boyfriends, whether they were dating basketball players or rappers. They would show everything off to say, look, our lives are perfect. And then you find out Kim Kardashian's married to a freaking Nazi, okay? Life wasn't so perfect behind the scenes. You found out Kris Jenner was married to someone who wanted to become a woman. So they want to project this perfect life. And that is what Meghan Markle is trying to do with Prince Harry. She is showing you she is madly in love. But I am kind of calling a flag on the play. I don't really know what that means, but it's a sports term. I'm calling a flag on the play on Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Now, this next clip I want to show you, it's been going viral the last few days. It shows just how insufferable Meghan Markle is. Take a look, try not to vomit, try not to gag, and then we'll discuss afterward. Roll it.
I don't know what I'm doing yet. My business hasn't gotten traction yet. No one's picked up my book proposal yet.
Yes.
I haven't found my soulmate yet. Everything is yet.
The power of yet.
The power of yet.
I have not gouged my eyeballs out yet. I haven't stabbed myself in the ears yet. I haven't thrown my computer across the room yet. What the hell was that? That was the most liberal, garbledy-goop therapy bullshit I have heard in a very long time. And this isn't even who Meghan Markle is, right? Meghan Markle was some wannabe actress. She was probably doing God knows what, allegedly, on the casting couch. She was always trying to find a rich, famous man to glom onto. And look, I'm not even hating the hustle. If Meghan Markle would do a podcast on how to find a rich man, how to find a rich prince, bag him, and move into the royal family and live in a palace, I would listen to that podcast. But she's out here doing confessions of a female founder. What has Meghan Markle found except a rich husband? What has she found except someone to produce her jams, jellies, and disgusting dog biscuits? Meghan Markle hasn't found anything, but she's portraying herself as this self-made woman, this genius, this business maven, this entrepreneur, this female founder. I call a bunch of BS. Meghan Markle, you also got $100 million from Netflix. You are not some self-made woman. You found an eligible bachelor prince, Prince Harry, the most eligible bachelor on earth. You had a royal wedding, you moved into the palace, and then you decided after 18 months to abscond to the US because you're lazy and you didn't want to work. Meghan Markle, it was too much for her to show up for some social engagements, to do some ribbon cuttings, to eat crumpets and scones. That is who Meghan Markle is. She doesn't want to work. She's a lot like the Democrats in Washington, D.C. I actually see a lot of Jasmine Crockett and Meghan Markle because they're pretending to be something they're not, and also they want to twerk, they don't want to work. That's Meghan Markle. She really is allergic to doing hard work. So sitting on this podcast and going, it hasn't happened yet. Your business is going to take off yet. That is ridiculous. I would love for Meghan Markle to spend 5 minutes in a real person's shoes who doesn't have $100 million, who's not married to a prince, who doesn't have a ton of investors from Netflix and outside forces, right? I would love for Meghan Markle to try and start a business that way because she had no success on her own. She was a B, C, maybe D-list actress. She conned the royal family into thinking she was some big Hollywood star. None of us knew who she was. Prince Harry was going around in the engagement interview saying, she's a big-time Hollywood actress. We just didn't know how she would act. She's a big-time Hollywood star. Who? I don't know Meghan Markle from Adam. Who the hell are you, Meghan Markle? I'm glad you married well, but stop trying to portray yourself as some genius female founder. It's ridiculous. Now, I think that's enough Prince Harry and Meghan Markle for now. I want to tee up what we have coming next, and that is an incredible interview with Calley Means, one of the leading forces in the MAHA movements, but we also got to pay some bills after this ad break. I'll see you in a sec. When the afternoon slump rolls around, consider skipping the coffee and reaching for something more refined. Peaks Duo offers an elevated ritual that nourishes from within without the caffeine crash. The pairing begins with Sun Goddess Matcha, a ceremonial grade tea grown in the lush, volcanic soils of Kagoshima, Japan. Quadruple toxin screened, shaded longer for deeper flavor and purity. That reflects the care behind every leaf. Smooth, vibrant, and deeply grounding. Then comes Nandaka, a bold, earthy blend crafted as an adaptogenic coffee alternative. Notes of roasted chicory, warm spices, and balancing botanicals create a rich, calming cup. Together, this duo creates a moment of reset, a ritual rooted in quality and intention. No fillers, no fluff, just organic, expertly sourced botanicals brewed for deep nourishment and a quiet kind of strength. Get 20% off plus a free rechargeable frother and glass beaker with the link peaklife.com/link. Coming up, we have an interview with Calley Means, one of the leading MAHA voices who I got to know working on the Kennedy campaign. I'm so grateful to the White House Media Affairs team for setting this up and to my friend Calley for his time. Now, as we spoke about Friday on Meghan's show, there's been a big brouhaha over Calley's sister, Calley Means, who was just appointed to be Surgeon General. Though we filmed this interview on April 29th, my feelings haven't changed. Until I have a reason to believe otherwise, I stand firm in my convictions that Calley and Calley Means are rock stars who have done and will continue to do good for the whole country. Now, without further ado, here's the interview. Well, we are here with one of my favorite people, Calley Means. If you are involved with MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, you know this man. Thank you, Calley, for being here.
Well, amazing to be here.
This is
Congrats on the new podcast.
Thank you so much.
So excited about
Thank you. This is long overdue. I want to start with a necessary question. So you've been on the outside. Now you've been around 100 days in the government. What is the most egregious example of corruption you've seen so far that would blow people's minds?
The crazy thing to me is that the lobbyists come in and they don't argue policy, they argue transparency.
Right.
They literally say, no, that's going to scare people to change the vaccine guidelines. Well, do you disagree that's the right policy? No, we don't disagree. It's the right policy, but we don't want it. They literally say this out loud, that they don't want to undermine trust, that patients are too confused and dumb to understand that we can't provide more transparency on things like pesticides, things like the standard of care, things like drugs, things like what's in our food. There's this infantilization that's rampant throughout the deep state and throughout the lobbying community that Americans are too dumb to understand the truth. And I think one big trend in the 100 days here is that there will be many policy discussions, but the American people are entitled to the truth. Marty McCary at the FDA, there's a huge block on sharing data sets for underlying drug trials. They did a recent study. 70% of data that underlies FDA trials can't be replicated. It's like, can we just see that data? They're not giving it to us. So that's a big thing. Policy debates are one thing. Transparency, we're not accepting lobbying on. We're going to give Americans the truth. And that's a predicate for everything.
Absolutely. There's been this narrative. I feel like the last few decades in the government, especially with doctors in the medical community, we know best. Parents, you don't know what's best for your child. And that speaks to what you were just saying. But moms and dads across the country, they have a sixth sense. They have a gut instinct for what is going to be the best thing for their child. How are you coming up against that and counteracting sort of this norm and this paradigm we've had for decades that we know everything, parents at home, you need to listen to us?
Marty McCary said something really powerful with Secretary Kennedy at the food diet announcement. He said, as a doctor, you always listen to the mom. And I think we've kind of lost our mind over the past 30 years where the medical system has just lost their mind. I mean, you look at a kid, it's pharmaceutical interventions first hour of life. It's eating ultra-processed food, not real food. You're a little bit overweight at 6 or 12, Ozempic. You're a little bit sad, SSRI. Gender transition. Still, the American Medical Association recommends gender-affirming care for 2-year-olds. So we've kind of like totally unimpeachably lost our mind, not even talking about COVID and how much we've been let down there. So in the midst of this total failure of the medical system, moms voted for President Trump. I mean, they voted for Bobby Kennedy and President Trump, who channeled this frustration. And I think what you see today is that this common sense, the intuition of moms gives Secretary Kennedy this sword, this momentum at his back to go into these meetings. And I can't express to you, and everyone needs to understand this, because there's going to be continued obfuscation from the media. There's going to be headline after headline about how this department for women's health was shut down, or this person was fired.
Absolutely.
Or, that's inevitable. You're going to inevitably have mass distractions and mass negativity when you have reform of the largest department of government. But we need to keep up that support of Secretary Kennedy, because when he goes into these meetings with the assertion and with the validity of voters,
right,
you're able to take on this nonsense. This nonsense has happened because voters haven't been focused on it. But now that they are, it's really, I think, a spiritual battle of common sense versus co-option of science.
Well, I feel like common sense is the overarching theme of this golden age of America, of President Trump's administration so far. I don't know what we had the last 4 years. That was not common sense. The Democrats, they're coming down on the side of insanity. But you mentioned something which were kids transitioning. And I've talked about that a lot because people say, you're gay, you should support kids transitioning. I'm gay, not brain dead. I have common sense. Is there a medical lobby pushing kids to transition and take these drugs and these gender hormones?
Unrelenting.
Okay.
Unrelenting. So I think you have to understand that the blob of special interests looks for issues where you can call someone racist, homophobic,
Sexist,
transphobe, sexist, what have you. They love those issues. And this child trans issue was a beautiful one, because you have to understand, the Human Rights Foundation, I thought did good things for gay marriage. I think that was absolutely the right step. But then these bureaucracies in DC, they're not going to shut down once they basically get what they were fighting for. So they took money from pharma. So the pharmaceutical industry lobbied millions of dollars to the Human Rights Foundation and gave them all these talking points and worked to make, basically you to be a bigot to question gender transition for kids. I think a lot of these actually good intentions, just like the NAACP fought for good things in the 60s, but has been totally co-opted today as a registered lobbyist for Ozempic. These institutions just lose their way. And at the core of this berating of the American people to support gender transition or else was a lot of corporate money, because there are billions and billions of dollars. I think it was really, I think this does get to this spiritual crisis we have, and another trend for me of the first 100 days, which is we're going to take common sense action for kids. I mean, when you have schools are a disaster, health is a disaster, food is a disaster, and the gender transition issue, President Trump has just been, stop it. We're going to have common sense. And that is, the way I view it, an actual resistance against a corporate co-option, because there's so much money at play. But still to this day, you have the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association supporting gender transition. You have still Medicare, Medicaid dollars going to that. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely. And so my audience is a bunch of young people, millions of young people who tune in on TikTok and other platforms. And it's been so disgusting to me that we are supposed to be the most prosperous nation on earth, and we have the sickest children. So tell me something, these first few months of the Trump presidency, you guys are most proud of, that you and Bobby have done with MAHA to make kids a little bit healthier in this country already.
So there's been some big policy wins,
right,
but I think the biggest victory that's happened is there's been a cultural change in the conversation. Conservatives now, 25 states are passing school lunch bills. They're passing SNAP reform bills to take soda off SNAP. They're taking the food dyes out. They're passing, you would have never expected 5 years ago that the Republican Party is the party of like safe food, going to farmers markets, incentivizing farmers markets on SNAP. So I think that's really positive, because these are issues of the left. And I think the left, through Trump's derangement syndrome, has totally lost their mind to where people on the Democratic side in states have been passionately arguing for government subsidies for soda because President Trump is for the opposite. So I actually think we're at a great moment where these are unimpeachable issues. And there's actually a bipartisan consensus that's been driven where at the very least, we're not going to poison our kids. We're going to look at the drugs. We're going to look at environmental toxins. We're going to look at food. And there's this cultural wins where I think parents are actually reading labels more. They're going to their school board meetings. They're actually like fighting to get kids healthier. And then that's buttressed by policy wins like grass standard reform, where we're actually going to study what's in our food, like conflict of interest reduction, like Marty McCary taking pharma and food lobbyists off of advisory panels, like the SNAP reform, like the food dye reform. I mean, this is just the start. But if we can continue this cultural momentum, which you're going to see with this report, we'd love to have you there on May 22nd. Secretary Kennedy, President Trump, the cabinet is going to release a report on the childhood chronic disease crisis, what more we can do. We'd love, invited Megan. I mean, we want all independent media. We want pharma executives, hospital executives, celebrities, governors, senators. What they're doing is they're putting a stake in the ground that we need a new view of health. We need to not just change Medicare, Medicaid policy, but actually focus on the incentives that are leading us to be the sickest country in the world. Absolutely. So the policy wins plus that overall cultural momentum has been really powerful.
Totally. And the last thing I'll say is I've just noticed, even traveling across the country, talking to people online, there are so many folks who never would have even paid attention to health or ingredients. Someone like my mom, she would go to the grocery store, grab whatever. She was raising 2 boys on her own. She doesn't have time to look at all the ingredients. What are some of the things, 2 or 3 things before I let you go, parents should look out for when they go to the grocery store that are incredibly dangerous?
I mean, the key thing for the Trump administration and Secretary Kennedy is let's keep it simple, let's keep it common sense. Ultra-processed food. Ultra-processed food consumption is 15% in Italy, Spain, and Japan. It's 70% of a child's diet in the United States. I mean, a big message from this administration, which you're going to see in the nutrition guidelines, is I don't care if you're vegan or you're carnivore. If you just go outside on the outside of the grocery, not the inside where the food is dead, the food is packaged, it does not have nutrients. It's nothing against the food industry. We hope they come along. I think they are, but eat whole food. That is the message from this government. I truly believe that if you fire every single bureaucrat that's overseen a failure of American nutrition and the hundreds of millions of studies for God knows what nutrition research at the NIH and replace that with 3 words, eat whole food, we'd be a much healthier country. President Trump looks great. I mean, he looks younger than ever.
President Trump looks amazing. President Trump is aging in reverse.
He's losing weight. Bobby put him on a carnivore diet, apparently.
He's not on
That's the
Ozempic.
rumor.
President Trump is not on Ozempic.
Well, his medical report came out. Ozempic was not listed.
Yes.
I'm actually not. We're in the White House, and I'm saying this for real. His biomarkers, his cholesterol and blood sugar and all those levels is top 5% for an American his age. He's lost weight. So it's common sense solutions. Mm-hmm. President Trump's cut out some carbs. He's eating more whole food. I mean, there's a real revolution happening in this country. So I think that's what the history books are going to look back on. I think we're going to shut down this decrepit HHS building. When Bobby gets out, we're going to build a beautiful new building for HHS called the Robert Kennedy Jr. Center for Health. I mean, we're gonna look back on this day as a day and a period of cultural awakening. I'll also just say, you know, being in the White House helping Secretary Kennedy, I think the narrative from the media is so disconnected from what the American people are hearing. If I were to sum up the first 100 days, for my entire life, we've talked about how politicians don't do big things. They don't tackle the big issues. This administration in 100 days is tackling government efficiency, the global trading order, the military-industrial complex. They're shutting down the Department of Education. They're trying to transform American health. I mean, whatever you think of President Trump, this government is tackling big issues, and I think it is absolutely criminal the media is not celebrating that.
Absolutely.
None of these issues people disagree with.
They're bipartisan.
They're totally
healthy
bipartisan.
Children. Yeah.
They're not left-right issues. And the media is just throwing pot shots and not acknowledging, as I think this administration deserves, and I think the American people are seeing, I think the polls are totally wrong, that this government is doing unimpeachable bipartisan issues, and they're tackling them in a big way.
Absolutely. I mean, the pollsters right now saying Trump's underwater, the administration, they're not in lockstep with the American people. Those same pollsters said Kamala was going to win every single swing state, so I don't put a lot of stock in these polls.
The pollsters are totally wrong, and even according to their own polls, the 2 most popular political figures in America right now, President Trump and Secretary Kennedy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Calley. We'll do something more long-form soon.
100%.
Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.
Coming up in a minute, we have to talk about Jen Psaki, another redhead who I can't stand, and MSNBC's ratings that are currently tanking. But we also got to pay some more bills. Here we have an ad. Let me tell you a story about a guy named Leo Grillo. While on a road trip, Leo came across a Doberman. The dog was severely underweight and clearly in trouble. Leo rescued the Doberman and named him Delta. Sadly, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help, which inspired Leo to start Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses from the wilderness, and they provide their animals with shelter, love, safety, and a home. This dedication and everlasting love to animals is Leo's mission and legacy. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions from people like us. And if you want caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner because there are tax-saving estate planning benefits too. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and speak with an advisor. We call a dog man's best friend for a reason. You can help those who need it most. So please visit deltarescue.org to learn more today. That's deltarescue.org. Now, we have to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that's the fact that the legacy media is dying. And I'm so happy the legacy media is dying. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this show right now. I wouldn't have a contract to do this podcast talking to all of you. As I said earlier, I'm so grateful to you for tuning in to our first episode. But MSNBC, no surprise here, their ratings are down in the gutter. Their ratings are in the seventh ring of hell. They are so low. And that's because MSNBC has lied to the American people for years. They tried to tell us Joe Biden was quick and sharp and doing cartwheels in private, right? They tried to tell us the border was secure. I was down at the border. I saw the people running across, okay? I saw needles and cards and IDs. The border was not secure. Go down to Arizona and Texas and talk to them. But MSNBC, it's their job to try and gaslight 5 angry women and their cats in their living rooms and urban areas and tell them that Trump is the boogeyman, he's Hitler, he's a dictator, he's Mussolini. And that type of rhetoric from MSNBC is why on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, someone tried to shoot him, right? MSNBC and the legacy media, they pushed this propaganda, they called Trump a threat to democracy, and then we all saw what happened. It was disgusting, tragic, and horrific, and it should not have happened. But Jen Psaki, she's apparently the new star at MSNBC. They're betting it all on this ginger. She used to be Joe Biden's White House press secretary. Now, what's interesting is when we were putting the show together, I was on the phone with my producer. I said, we need a picture of Jen Psaki and Joe Biden. She said, I can't find a picture of Jen Psaki and Joe Biden. Me trying to be a benevolent host, I said, I don't know. Can we go look again? I'm not trying to be too harsh on my producer. I said, can you go look again? I'm sure there's a picture of Jen Psaki and Joe Biden. We could not find one picture of Joe Biden, the president, and his White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, which shows us how insulated Joe Biden was. When Karine Jean-Pierre said she would go out there sometimes and hadn't even spoken to Biden, she was being honest, apparently. It is very bizarre that the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, we are scouring Google, and we cannot find a picture of Joe Biden with his press secretary. That would never happen with Caroline Leavitt. Caroline Leavitt is in constant contact with the president. She speaks to him multiple times a day. They're heading off to the Middle East this afternoon, right? It is insane. It is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs bananas that Jen Psaki has no pictures with the president, but her ratings are tanking. We have an article, right? We pulled up the stats because we're a little bit shady. We like to do our research. I'm like the CIA. I will dig and dig and dig, and let's look at these stats right now. So Jen Psaki, she has a new show called The Briefing. You're welcome for the promo, Jen Psaki, okay? She has a new show called The Briefing. It's in the 9 p.m. time slot, Tuesdays through Fridays. Rachel Maddow, she's on Mondays. I would love to just do a show one day a week and make $25 million. Rachel Maddow, in my next life, I'm coming back as you because she's getting $25 million and she does one show a week and then still complains that she has it rough and her network sucks. Okay. Now, Jen Psaki, she pulled in 1.2 million viewers. 139,000 of those were in the key demographic. That's 25 to 54. Now, I don't like that term. I don't like the term key demographic because to me, it's come one, come all to the Halloween ball. If you're 90, if you're 100, if you're 150 and you have a Wi-Fi connection, you are welcome to come and watch my show. If you're under 25, if you're 18, 19, 20, you're interested in politics, come on over and let's have an open dialogue. But Jen Psaki, she was doing 139,000 viewers in that target demo. If I were doing numbers that low, I probably wouldn't have this show right now. But let's go on. The next day, the show took a steep dive down. Jen Psaki, she pulls in only 1 million viewers. She's lost 200,000 in total. She pulls in just 65,000 in the key demographic. So she's basically cut that in half, which means young people, this key demographic all the networks love, they turned on Jen Psaki and they said, this is a bunch of baloney. We don't want to watch this woman lie to us and gaslight us. And there's a reason this last election was the podcast election. Young people, they don't want to tune into MSNBC and the legacy media and be lied to and gaslit constantly and told everything is hunky-dory when it's not. That's why they're going to social media. It's why they're going to YouTube. They're tuning into Apple. They're tuning into Megyn Kelly. They're tuning into Joe Rogan. They don't want to go watch a bunch of lies. And Jen Psaki, she is also a liar. Allegedly, right? I'm not in her brain, but she seems like a liar to me because Jen Psaki, just last week, she tried to say, I didn't see any signs of Joe Biden's decline. I didn't see any signs of Joe Biden's decline. Maybe because you never saw him. Maybe because we can't find one single picture of you with the president who you are supposed to work for, Jen Psaki. So let's play a clip. Let's play a clip and then discuss.
I left in May of 2022, just for the facts here. And I have seen Biden once since then, when I took my daughter to the holiday party this last December after he had lost. And so I hadn't seen him in person during that period of time. I never saw that person, not a single time. And I was in the Oval Office every day that was on that debate stage. I'm not a doctor. Aging happens quite quickly. Were things that people saw during that period of time that were similar to that or would have been in a category of that? I don't know, possibly, right? And all these books are going to tell us.
Like, do you think that were they actively covering it up? Were they sort of in denial, or was that just a bad debate? Like, what is your read on that?
Well, this is what I mean about cover up is a very loaded term, I think.
Well, it means you knew that it was really bad and you're pretending otherwise versus you're deluding yourself, which I think is what people do a lot.
Well, I understand, but I still think it's like cover up is often like a crime.
Jen Psaki, the Mars rover could see that Joe Biden was in decline. Okay, he didn't know the temperature of the room he was in. Jill Biden, she was running cabinet meetings. She was sitting behind the desk on Air Force One. There was a shadow government running the show. All of these unelected bureaucrats, the last 4 years under Joe Biden, they were pulling the puppet strings and making decisions that made our lives exponentially worse. So Jen Psaki, you're also full of shit, and I'm happy to see that my ratings are gonna do better than yours. Ha 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 ha, Jen Psaki. So yeah, no, Jen Psaki, you are full of crap for saying, I never saw any decline. He seemed fine to me. There were conversations in 2019 in the presidential primary about how Joe Biden was not doing well. Allegedly, some of his own family members were trying to tell him, you should not run. Okay, you probably shouldn't run because you're really in decline and you're not doing well and you're showing signs of dementia, right? We had Joe Biden shouting out people in the crowd who were dead, who weren't even there. Joe Biden's like, hey, is Sally Sue in the crowd? They're like, no, she's 6 feet under. So that would tell you the guy probably is in some type of cognitive decline. And if Jen Psaki is not astute enough to see that, she probably shouldn't have her own TV show and she should have never been press secretary in the first place. But Joe Scarborough, you know, of Mika and Joe, Morning Joe, a very famous show, or as I like to call it, Morning Wood, from the rumors I hear about what's happening behind the scenes. Morning Joe, back in March of 2024, here's what he had to say about 81-year-old Joe Biden's cognitive health. Let's take a look.
I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically. Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years.
This is the best version of Biden. The border is open. We have hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants pouring in every month. We've got wars around the world. We've got record sky-high inflation. This is the best version of Biden, even on policy, right, Joe Scarborough? You also seem like you're kind of full of crap and you're carrying water for your friend Joe Biden because you know he watches your show and you want access. But Joe Scarborough, be real. Be real for a second. That is the best version of Joe Biden, calling out people in the crowd who are no longer with us, who have gone on to greener pastures, right? This is a man who checked his watch as dead soldiers were coming home. I hate to be vulgar and bring this back up, but we can talk about Abbeygate if we have to. We can talk about the horrific Afghanistan withdrawal. And now that I have this platform, we just might, because like I said, I'm going to have my foot on these people's necks from here until the end of time. Joe Biden, You were not in good shape. We can also talk about the cocaine that was left at the White House. Is that the best version of Joe Biden? He's got cocaine. You got topless trans people on the White House lawn. The border is open. We can take apart the cognitive decline. But the man was not doing well. Joe Scarborough, you need to go do some soul searching. Maybe you need to tune in to Spot On with Link Lauren and get the real rundown of what is happening. Now, this next clip of MSNBC that I want to show you is going to make you cringe. This is the cast of some new show they have. I don't give a shit, don't know the title, but this is the cast of some new show MSNBC has after they've gotten off air. Take a look and then we'll talk.
Back out, so we finished
It's a
the
wrap.
first episode.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap. I need a drink. I need a drink. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. And we gonna eat. We gonna drink. We gonna party. We gonna eat. We gonna drink. And we gonna be back tomorrow.
Meanwhile, in the back, they're like working.
Okay, come back.
This is a lot of excitement for people whose ratings are down in the dirt. Like I said, they're talking to about 5 angry women in their living rooms. I don't know why they're so happy-go-lucky and giddy. Simone Sanders, I also have to say this, you guys, I don't want to get canceled in my first episode, but it's my job to call it like I see it. MSNBC canned Joy Reid. They're like, Joy Reid, even you have crossed the line, right? Remember Joy Reid was going on air every day and saying how much she hated white people? Joy Reid, you're probably one of the most racist women on television, and you forgot that a white person writes your checks. So word to the wise, right? If your boss is white and in charge for your existence and paying your bills, probably don't go on TV and say that you don't like white people. Probably not a good game plan. But they can Joy Reid, and they say, we're going to replace Joy Reid with Simone Sanders. So they replaced one bald black woman with another bald black woman. I feel like MSNBC was trying to pull the wool over their viewers' eyes. They're like, you know what? Our viewers, they're older, their vision's going. Let's just put Simone in for Joy Reid and hope that nobody notices. But this is also what they do because they're just filling quotas. MSNBC, the left, they're all about DEI and quotas. It's what we've seen at some of these highfalutin, fancy Ivy League universities. You know what I'm saying? So they decide, okay, we got rid of one black bald woman who hates white people. Let's put in another bald black woman who hates white people. Capiche? I also don't really like Simone Sanders. I don't respect her, and I'll tell you why. Sometimes Simone Sanders will make a good point. Every once in a while, Simone Sanders will criticize the Democrat Party, and I'll say, yes, thank you. We all see it. It's the most obvious criticism, but it's something we all see. Simone Sanders, though, the reason I really lost all respect for her, right before the election, she got an exclusive interview with Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband. Now, Doug Emhoff was all over the news for allegedly beating up on his girlfriend, right? He's an alleged wife beater. According to very reliable sourcing and articles, this woman is a powerful attorney. I don't think she would have said this if it was a lie. Doug Emhoff slapped her so hard, waiting in line for the car, that she spun around in circles and saw stars. So Doug Emhoff does an interview with Simone Sanders. Simone Sanders doesn't even ask Doug Emhoff about these allegations. What kind of journalist doesn't ask the subject in front of them about the most glaring story in the news right now about punching and slapping and beating up on their girlfriend when his wife is running for president and is the leader of the Democrat Party? I don't know how Simone Sanders got away with that, right? Donald Trump, if he flies over a state, he gets an indictment. If Donald Trump looks at someone the wrong way, he gets served a subpoena. You know what I'm saying? But Simone Sanders, she does an interview with Doug Emhoff, and she does not even ask him about these massive headlines. And it shows that the Democrat Party is kind of a cult, and they work with the legacy media, they work with MSNBC to try and convince you that they are not. They want MSNBC to go out there and push their talking points. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they were very mafia-esque with the press. If you asked them tough questions, you would lose access. If you talked about certain things, you would lose access. But Simone Sanders, I have no respect for you as a journalist. How could you sit there in front of Doug Emhoff right before the election and not ask him about these major allegations where he slapped his girlfriend and abused her? The fact that you didn't even broach the topic is absolutely disgusting, and it's a shame that you are even on television. Now, I think we've exhausted this topic. I don't have enough food in my stomach to continue talking about MSNBC and looking at these horrific people. So let's move right along. As we're wrapping up this first ever episode of Spot On with Link Lauren, I wanted to end with a feel-good story. This warmed my heart. I love good news. To quote Kamala Harris, I just love good news. Now, establishing housing for homeless veterans was a campaign promise. It's something President Trump has talked about for years. And one thing I love about President Trump, he's actually a man of his word. Unlike any other presidents, President Trump said, I'm going to do tariffs. He's doing tariffs. He talked about tariffs for 40 years. He was on Oprah talking about tariffs decades ago. President Trump says, I'm going to secure the border and get MS-13 and Tren de Aragua off the streets. And guess what? He's actually doing it with Tom Homan and Kristi Noem. So he was talking about making housing for veterans years ago. We have a clip. I'd love for you to take a look.
Crooked Joe Biden, the U.S. government has spent nearly $1 billion to house illegal aliens and foreign migrants in expensive luxury hotels, courtesy of you, the American taxpayer, and they want to spend billions and billions more. Meanwhile, we have 33,000 veterans in this country who are homeless and living very poorly, I might add, and it's a shame. We'll sign an executive order to cut off Joe Biden's massive spigot of funding for shelter and transport of illegal aliens and redirect a portion of those savings, a very large portion, I might add, to provide shelter and treatment for homeless American veterans.
So for everybody acting shocked by this, President Trump told you exactly what he was going to do. And I love this news. We need more housing for veterans. They're going to try to house 6,000 veterans in this complex, and they're going to have resources for the veterans that they so desperately need. Now, objectively, I don't care if you're on the left, the right, the middle, all across the political spectrum. Like I say, it's come one, come all to the Halloween ball. But objectively, Joe Biden left our soldiers behind. This is a man who left them behind. The Afghanistan withdrawal was an utter calamity. He also checked his watch as dead soldiers were coming home. That is who Joe Biden is. That's the man, that's the character of Joe Biden. President Trump, he wants to build housing for veterans and use the money that was for illegal migrants, which I think is a great reappropriation of funds. I don't know if that was a Doge decision, but I am happy to see this. To show you President Trump walks the walk and talks the talk, just last week, he had wounded warriors come and visit him at the White House. This is really the people's house. You guys have seen me at the White House recently, and I was making videos in my bedroom 2 years ago. This is the most accessible, transparent, open administration we've ever had. But then again, Joe Biden's was basically on lockdown, so there's not a lot of competition here. But I was so happy. It really warmed my heart to see President Trump have these wounded warriors to the White House. And now that I hear he is going to open housing for 6,000 homeless veterans, that is an incredible feel-good story that should be all over the legacy media. If Joe Biden, if Barack Obama, if Bill Clinton did that, MSNBC would be running it 24/7. But because it's President Trump, they want to shelve and bury all of the good things he is doing for the country. As for you guys, I could not be more grateful for you tuning in to our first ever episode of Spot On with Link Lore. And I'm going to be honest with you. We're figuring it out as we go. The earpiece was broken. We ordered another earpiece that came with a tear in it. So we got an AirPod. We are rolling and figuring it out as we go. I know a lot of you, some of you have been with me for years, months, weeks, days. You're just happy. We have a high definition camera and high quality audio. I could not be more grateful to MK Media, to my team. We are going to be back on Wednesday. We have a lot more topics to cover. I'm just so excited for this new venture. I'm incredibly grateful for you guys. I don't take for granted that you're tuning in, that you're tweeting, that you're sharing on Instagram, that you're following us, that you're going to Apple Podcast and giving us 5 stars when you don't have to. There are a million shows out there, and the fact that you chose to tune in to Spot On is something that really, really makes me happy. So thank you so much. Have a blessed day. Be safe out there, and don't get into too much trouble. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Bye.